Now turn to today's presenter so we can begin. Go ahead, Marianne.
All right, thank you, Stella. Good morning, everyone. My name is Marianne Rigger. I am an associate staff attorney with the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. Welcome to my webinar, Scam Proof, Outsmart, Fraudsters, and Stay Safe. I have been the leading prosecuting consumer fraud attorney in BACP for the last 8.5 years. I estimate that I have prosecuted over 3,500 consumer fraud cases. So that's 3,500 victims and businesses, different fact patterns. And unfortunately, while that work really never slows down or stops, it has given me pretty good insight about what the common facts are and how people are being taken advantage of by bad businesses. And so I've been able to develop this webinar to try to get ahead of that so that consumers can stay safe and protected, and so that they don't fall victim to these common scams. So before we get into it, I wanted to just talk about the department generally a little bit. We are an interesting department in that we are both the licensing arm and the regulation arm. So BACP can issue business licenses, and we do a lot to try to support small businesses with our outreach efforts, conducting webinars on social media and filing taxes and how to grow your small business. We do small business expos and have a small business center where businesses can come in or call in and ask for help. And then on the other arm, we have the regulation arm. So we have a team of investigators that work in all different areas, not just consumer fraud, but also liquor, tobacco, public vehicle like taxis and Uber, Lyft, rideshare drivers. So we have teams of investigators that accept complaints from our 311 system, or we conduct our internally led investigations to make sure that businesses remain in compliance with the municipal code. We have lots of different rules and regulations that businesses have to follow in order to operate in compliance with the city's laws. And so the investigators are there to make sure that businesses comply with those laws. And that helps to keep an even playing field for all businesses, because if you have one business taking shortcuts, defrauding customers, or just not adhering to the city's municipal code, then that disadvantages all of the businesses that are playing by the rules and doing everything correctly. So within BACP, this is where my consumer fraud team fits in. We have a team of investigators, probably about 4 investigators and 1 attorney, where they are assigned cases. They review them, they gather facts and evidence from both sides, compile that, and write citations that are prosecuted in court by myself. And so on the right-hand side, we see the results from last year. We entered $5 million in judgments against bad businesses. We were able to enter over $230,000 in restitution that was obtained on behalf of victims that filed complaints. Restitution is essentially a refund. And so we don't just seek fines that are payable to the city of Chicago. Some case types are eligible for BACP to be able to seek a refund from the business to the consumer. And in the last year, there were just over 450 cases that were filed and brought to judgment. So not currently pending. The cases were closed out and judgments were entered against the business. All right, so getting into kind of what my team does, we have a definition here of consumer fraud, kind of like the legal technical definition: use of deception, false promise, misrepresentation, concealment, omission of any material fact with the intent that the consumer rely on the deception or misrepresentation during the course of business. Okay, so what does that really mean? Consumer fraud can be thought of kind of like, as an example, the classic bait and switch is really the classic consumer fraud. So bait and switch, let's imagine a motor vehicle sales shop, and there's a car on the lot that's been sitting a while. It's got 150,000 miles on it, and they decide to roll that odometer back to 50,000 miles. When someone purchases it, the amount of miles a vehicle has is this material fact, something that they rely on. When you go to buy a used car, you want to know how many miles it has. This is a material fact that a person is relying on in deciding to purchase that vehicle for X amount of dollars. So the fact that it doesn't really have 50,000, it has 150,000, that's a material misrepresentation. The consumer relied on that, and so it is an example of consumer fraud. A consumer doesn't necessarily mean just an individual. If you are a business owner transacting with another business, you can be a consumer within the limits of the City of Chicago ordinance, so that these ordinances do protect you even though you're a business and not just an individual. And the reason why I'm talking about what consumer fraud is because the consumer fraud team, investigation and prosecution team, operates with authority that were granted by the city's laws. And there's limits to it. And one of the limits is that if we want to seek restitution or a refund for a customer, it must fall within being consumer fraud. And so not everything falls under that category of consumer fraud. So let's talk about what it is not. Consumer fraud is not when someone is unsatisfied with the service that they receive or a product that they receive. So if it's a quality of work or just a quality issue with an item, that is not going to rise to the level of there being a misrepresentation that was relied on in inducing someone to purchase that service or product. A misunderstanding between a customer and a business is also not consumer fraud. So if you have kind of a vague contract that you signed that doesn't clearly define the terms, and you thought you were getting one thing and the business provides another, but it's not clearly laid out, that misunderstanding does not rise to the level of consumer fraud. And finally, a breach of contract also does not rise to the level of consumer fraud. So something like if a business is late, let's say you sign a home repair contract and the work is supposed to be completed by a certain date and it takes weeks longer than that. And there's no time is of the essence term in the contract, then even that breach doesn't rise to the level of consumer fraud. So again, why this matters is because it could impact our ability to be able to seek restitution on a consumer's behalf. However, if you are defrauded by a business in the city of Chicago, I would always encourage you to call 311 and always file a complaint. It won't mean, if it's not considered consumer fraud, it doesn't mean that the complaint is not actionable. We may still be able to bring them to justice and get them in compliance with the law so it doesn't happen again. It might just affect whether or not we are able to seek a refund on a customer's behalf. So these are some of the businesses that are regulated by BACP. I think I've filed complaints against every single one of these business types, and they're generally in order of how many complaints we receive. So you'll see home repair and motor vehicle repair at the top, but really any kind of brick and mortar business that you see in the city of Chicago is covered by the city's consumer protection ordinances. So if you are defrauded by a company, know that you can always turn to 311 to BACP to file a complaint. We do have some limitations. The business has to be in the city of Chicago for us to have jurisdiction to be able to hear the complaint. So either the business is located in Chicago, or the consumer is in Chicago and the harm happened there. So for example, if it is a general contractor based in the suburbs, but you are a homeowner in the city of Chicago and you signed a contract for them to work on your home that is in the city of Chicago, then that brings them within the jurisdiction, even though their business is located outside of the city of Chicago. So some more limitations on what our consumer fraud investigation and prosecution team can and cannot do. We don't represent individual people. When you file a complaint and the city pursues an enforcement action, the case is titled City of Chicago versus Bad Business. And the individual that filed the complaint is not a party to the case. So normally when you file your own private lawsuit, you direct the litigation, you make all of the decisions about, what action is going to be taken, what is going to be filed, what's not going to be filed, and timelines, and you would make all of those decisions. But that's not the case when you file a complaint with the city of Chicago. As the attorney for BACP, I represent the city of Chicago and not the interests of a single person. Even where we seek restitution or a refund, it's still the city of Chicago versus Bad Business. Next, we don't mediate complaints between private parties. So we don't engage in like a back and forth of they said this and the business is willing to give you this amount to make this complaint go away. Our interactions are for fact gathering, and we issue enforcement based on the facts and the evidence that we get from both sides, but we don't kind of act as a go-between between those two parties. Next, we can't accept checks, any form of payment, any items on behalf of the complainant. So sometimes where we have a clear case for restitution, the business will ask if they can just cut us a check to give to the consumer to make their complaint go away. We do encourage the business to contact the consumer directly. Nothing stops consumer and the business from trying to work things out on their own. But BACP can't take custody of a check, or if it's an item that was paid for, I don't know, like a custom made dress or something like that, and the person never got the item that they paid for. Sometimes the business will ask if they can just bring it and leave it for the complainant. And the answer is no, we can't take custody of money or items on behalf of a consumer. And then finally, investigators are not expert witnesses. So our investigators, we saw that big long list of different case types that we could potentially have. Our investigators are general investigators. One day they're working on home repair. The next, it's a mechanic case. The next one is a hotel. And that matters because there's certain types of cases that we receive that allege very technical violations on like the building code, or something that would require a mechanic to be able to say, this work was done improperly and they made the vehicle worse by whatever the MVR shop did. So our investigators are not expert witnesses that can testify to those kinds of really technical violations. We do prosecute contractors, we do prosecute motor vehicle repair companies, and there are a litany, especially with those two areas, of different regulations a company has to follow. But consumers should be aware that for something really technical about something that may have been done incorrectly, sometimes it's better to consult with a private attorney to discuss how that specific fact can be proven in court or whether it would be needed to succeed on a more general case, as opposed to relying on a BACP investigator, because we don't have expert witnesses that can testify to very technical violations. The most frequent complaint types, and some of these we will talk about today, are rogue towing, home repair, motor vehicle repair, the purchase of used vehicles, booting in private parking lots, IRS fraud, and the sales of commercial goods. So before we get into talking about the specific areas where we see people defrauded the most, I'd like to talk generally about why we fall for scams, because I think it can help to prevent them from happening if you can take a moment to, when you're talking to a scammer and you just think logically about what they're saying to you and what they're asking for. I think that can really help to kind of make things pause and maybe put an end to it. Because scammers, no matter what kind of scam it is, use similar techniques in a lot of the different scams that we see. So the first one that we see is that they present exciting offers, things that the communication is designed to make you act quickly without thinking. And so it'll be like a limited time sale, or that you have to sign right then and there. And for most people, if you just take a minute to look over what they're asking for, what they're asking you to pay for, if you have time to comparison shop, then you would see some of the red flags. But when you're so caught up in getting a good deal and that you have to act right now, it puts our guard down. The next is that they prey on politeness. We would like to think of scammers as these horrible, evil people, and they are, but they don't appear that way. They can be super charming, very good at trying to act like a friend, and they'll say whatever they need to build your trust, to build a rapport, because like I said, as soon as your guard is down, they really prey on that. Next, they present themselves as an authority, and that's another kind of common thing that we see, or at least in the most common scheme types in home repair and motor vehicle repair. There is a really big disparity between the amount of knowledge the average consumer has about home repair or vehicle repair versus the amount of knowledge that a contractor has or a mechanic has. As an average homeowner, as an average vehicle owner, sure, you have like some basic knowledge, but when you're talking, when you know that there's a problem and you're talking to someone who's saying, I've been in this business 30 years, this is the worst thing I've ever seen, you need to get this taken care of right away, or the problem's going to get worse, and you need to pay this amount, and we need to sign it right now. As a consumer that's not in those industries, it's like you don't really have a way of knowing whether or not they're telling the truth or not. And so you kind of put your trust in them because they're telling you how much experience they have and how many times they've seen this. And, you're just having to go on trust. And so we'll talk about some things that people can do so that they are not taken advantage of in that way. And then finally, they prey on everyone. I think that, whether you are educated or not, or younger or older, you think that you are safe and that maybe you would know better. But the reality is that there are victims in every single demographic. So half of all victims have a college degree. The ages 20 to 29 made up the biggest portion of the complaints, although they had a lower loss. And then for ages 60 plus, it was fewer of the complaints that the FTC received, but they did suffer greater losses. So there isn't one demographic that is safer than the other. Everyone really needs to be on the lookout because everybody is at risk of being victimized by a scammer. So some general tips to outsmart fraudsters. Number one is always going to be, before you hire any company for anything, to do your research by talking to friends and family that have had, that have worked with a company and that they know to be trustworthy. That's probably one of the best ways to be able to find someone to come in and do work for you. The next would be to check online review websites and make sure that the reviews are okay, with the caveat that reviews can be bought and paid for. Bad reviews can be removed. So use them, but know that it's not the only thing that you should be doing. Next would be to take advantage of the resources that BACP has on its website. So if you are looking for a general contractor, we have lists of general contractors. We have lists of plumbers, masons, electricians that have licenses to work in the city of Chicago. We also have a data portal that has a list of all licensed businesses in the city of Chicago. And so if you're curious about, whether the cleaners that you're working with or a furniture store, whether they're legit, one thing that you could do is go to that link and check out whether they at the very least have a business license to operate in the city of Chicago. And then we also have a list of all of the businesses and individuals that were found liable for consumer fraud within the last 3 years. And that is also maintained on our website. So if you're looking to make a bigger purchase, a car, home repair, looking for a wedding venue, or even something not quite as high dollar figure, you can search and see if the business that you are considering hiring for whatever is on that list by just doing a Control F and searching for the business name. And then finally, if the business advertises itself as being a corporation, either Inc. or LLC, you can check to make sure that they're actually incorporated in the state of Illinois. For a lot of home repair companies, we see a lot of individuals that go door to door doing like concrete work or something along those lines. And one way that a business may try to appear to be more legitimate than it is would be to just come up with a business name and throw Inc. or LLC at the end, because people have come to trust that. But you can verify whether the business is actually incorporated or has an LLC. So some tips to stop a scam before it starts would be to get everything in writing, get a contract in writing, and also to make sure that the contract accurately represents what you believe that you are getting. We talked about how vagueness and misunderstanding is not consumer fraud. And so if you're doing a walkthrough for home repair with a contractor and they're promising all of these things, make sure that when you sign your contract with them, that it includes all of the things that you discussed, so that they don't try to swap items out or give you something, lesser materials that aren't as sturdy or are lower end than what you originally talked about. And then to go along with that, any changes that come up during the duration of the work need to also be documented with a change order. So anytime there's a change to the agreement, should be evidenced by a second document in writing evidencing what the change is to the original agreement. The next one would be to get a second opinion. I would say even get a third opinion, and see where the quotes lie in relation to each other. If you have a quote that's way below what the others are, it may be too good to be true. So you may want to approach that person with caution to see why their quote is so much lower than other competitors. Next would be to avoid paying cash under any circumstances. cash just isn't traceable. We always recommend using a credit card because they usually have more protection than using a check or using a debit card. You can reverse a charge. And in my experience, the credit card companies have been pretty good about those kinds of credit card disputes, where if someone is taken advantage of, they're able to reverse it with a credit card, which isn't an option when you pay with a debit card or check. And then the final one would be to keep all paperwork between you and the business. Make sure that you have copies of any receipts and invoices, because it can be useful evidence if you do need to file a complaint down the line. So now we'll get into some of the most common scam types that we see. So the first one is rogue towing. Rogue towing is when when you're in an accident and a tow truck stops at the scene of the accident and asks if you want them to tow your vehicle. You didn't call them, police didn't call them, your insurance didn't call them. They listen to police scanners, and these companies will race each other, drive super dangerously down the shoulders, weaving in and out of traffic, to race to accident scenes to be the first one so that they can tow your vehicle. They do sometimes lie and claim to be affiliated with either a government agency with the city of Chicago, or, whatever location the accident happens in that they're from that city or the county. They can claim to be from your insurance. They can claim to be from like a roadside service like AAA. And then what ends up happening is that consumer will sign a tow disclosure that has blank spots for the fees. So they'll sign, and then the company will add the amount in later and charge really exorbitant prices for towing and storage. And you'll see sometimes it's in the thousands of dollars, when typically most tows are probably around 150 to 200. And these rogue towers are they do tow your vehicle, but charging just truly egregious amounts of money for it. So ways that you can outsmart fraudsters and not fall victim to this kind of scam would be never to accept an unsolicited tow. Make sure that you are the one that calls the tow truck company, or you call your insurance, you call your roadside service to dispatch someone. You get the name of the company that they're going to dispatch on your behalf, and then you physically look at the tow truck that shows up to make sure that whoever your insurance or roadside service company told you would be coming, that name matches what's actually on the tow truck that arrives first. And then never sign a tow authorization that has blank spaces. So when you look at a tow disclosure form at the bottom, you'll see different lines for different line items for different things, services that they provide. So if it's like, if you are a truck and you have work materials, there can be like a hazardous chemical fee, towing fees, storage fees. If your vehicle is a heavy duty vehicle, there can be fees for that. So just make sure that something is entered in the towing, storage, if cleanup is needed, that there's something entered for that, and that the total is entered and added up properly. Of course, all of this is way easier said than done, because most people after an accident are pretty shaken up. So it's a difficult one, because to remember these things in the moment when you've just been in an accident is a really difficult thing to do. But if you remember one thing, it would be to just make sure that you call for your own tow, and to make sure that the tow truck that arrives matches the name of the person that you actually called. All right, the next one would be home repair. And of course, obviously there's thousands of valid contractors, but we also do see tons and tons of home repair complaints in the city of Chicago. And so the common themes from the ones that tend to defraud people are that they make unsolicited contact, especially after either a big weather event, wind, hail, tornado, or after something like a fire or a flood. Sometimes they may say something along the lines of, we were working on your neighbor's house and we have leftover materials. If you sign with us, we can see that you could use, a new porch or a new concrete walkway. If you sign with us, we can give you a good deal because we have these leftover materials from this project that would go to waste anyway. So if you sign with us today, pay in cash and pay in full, then we'll give you the best deal that you'll ever get. So those kinds of unsolicited requests, demands for cash, full payment in advance are all kind of like the hallmarks of a bad contractor. If they ask you to pay a third party, so if their contract says their business name and then they ask you to pay some random individual, can be a way to try to dodge having a complaint filed against them or trying to hide money or assets. If their contracts or estimates are really generic, just very vague, and don't delineate all of the work that you are talking about having done, then that is a pretty big red flag. I've seen, I think at the big box stores, Home Depot and Lowe's, I think they sell like invoice pads. And I can tell you that if you're having a significant amount of work done, it should probably be on something that is a little bit more detailed than those like receipt pads or invoice pads. The city of Chicago's ordinance requires a business to have line items for all of the work that's going to be done and how much it costs. So at the very least, each room or each component should be listed out with the price that it's going to be. Another red flag is if the quote is well below estimates from other companies. And then the last red flag, if they don't give the consumer rights documents, then that is also not a good sign. In the state of Illinois, if a contract is signed at someone's house, you have 3 days to decide to rescind the contract, and it's not considered a breach. You simply don't have to go through with it. If a contract is signed at your home, you have 3 days. And then the other one, the consumer rights brochure for home repair work, is a document created by the state of Illinois Attorney General, and it gives just some tips on how to avoid being a victim of consumer fraud, home repair fraud. It has many of the things that we're talking about in this webinar, but it also has an area on the brochure where you sign and the contractor signs, and the contractor is required to have a copy of both of your signatures, and they're required to maintain that for 5 years. And so someone not giving this basic consumer rights document is also a red flag. If you do hire someone, a fraudster, what you can expect to happen would be that they take off with your money. They don't do any work. Any work that they do ends up being shoddy. Sometimes people are left in a really bad position where, for example, they'll begin work, they'll do some demo, but then they don't secure, excuse me, they don't secure the home properly. So like they'll leave the roof open and it'll rain and cause a lot more damage. Excuse me, 1 minute. Okay, sorry about that. And then next would be that a bad contractor, if you hire them, they don't pull permits, which can leave you on the hook with the city of Chicago. So the Department of Buildings requires permits to be pulled under some circumstances. And if your contractor doesn't pull them for you, it's the owner of the property that ends up on the hook. It's not the contractor. So another good idea, if you're ever having home repair work done, would be to ask whether or not a permit is required, and to ask for proof that a permit was pulled before they begin. So ways that you can outsmart home repair fraudsters would be to vet prospective contractors and the ways that we talked about, comparing quotes, getting advice, looking at the list of active businesses, making sure that they weren't found liable for consumer fraud in the past, paying by either credit card or a check in increments as opposed to paying everything up front, and to make sure that your contract fully reflects everything that you talked about with the company and doesn't leave anything out. The next thing we'll talk about is motor vehicle repair shops. Again, this is kind of an area where there's a big disparity between the level of knowledge the mechanic has versus the consumer has. And anytime you have that, there's the opportunity for people to be taken advantage of because an unscrupulous mechanic can, I think, fairly easily smooth talk their way into telling someone how bad off their vehicle is, how they need all of these really expensive repairs, and the consumer is really none the wiser because they are not technical experts in that area. So one of the ways that the city of Chicago seeks to combat that would be by requiring a pretty significant amount of information to be provided to customers on estimates and invoices. So you have a lot of different rights in terms of what you're entitled to see and know before work is done. So your receipts, estimates, invoices should all have your name, contact info, information about your car, and the odometer information. You always have the right to decide whether or not you want to look at a part that was replaced by the shop. So that prevents an unscrupulous mechanic from saying that they're going to replace something, saying that yours is in bad shape and then simply not swapping it out, or swapping it out and like taking it for themselves and giving you a new one when you didn't need it. So you have the right to look at what was taken out of your vehicle. The next is you have the right to know whether the shop stands by their work with a warranty. And they have to tell you that up front. They're not required to provide a warranty. You just have the right to know whether or not you are being provided with one and what the scope of it is. And then finally, you have the right to decide what will happen if the amount that you are quoted is going to be more once the mechanic opens up the hood and takes a look. And that's not an uncommon thing. Sometimes, based on their conversation with you, they'll state that it sounds like it's this issue, it'll be X amount of dollars, and then they open the hood and see that there's more. And so that's not uncommon, that's not necessarily a red flag. However, at the outset, you have the right to decide what you want to do, whether you want to just allow them to do whatever work at whatever cost. You have the right to decide whether they can do repairs up to a certain amount and then call for approval if it ends up being higher, or you can ask them to simply create another estimate in writing if what they're proposing is going to vary at all from what they originally had told you. So know that you do have access to all of that information, and that you can use that to decide whether or not you are going to have your repairs done by this company or not. All right, the next thing that we'll talk about is airport hustlers. So this is when a taxi driver, rideshare, Uber, Lyft, livery driver approaches you when you are at Midway or O'Hare and asks if you want a ride to whatever your destination is. This is strictly prohibited under the city's laws. All licensed chauffeurs are aware of this. You are not allowed to solicit, as a taxi driver, you're not allowed to solicit at the airports. So if you are approached by someone while you're waiting at baggage claim or while you are outside, know that there are some pretty significant risks if you accept their offer and get in their vehicle. And so what will happen is, they are very likely to be a suburban cab, not licensed by the city of Chicago. And so when you get in a city taxi that has the license plate with the TX on it, you know that those drivers go through background checks. The vehicles get inspected to make sure that they are safe. And there are predetermined fees of what they're allowed to charge to go to different destinations. And so if you are not in a licensed city cab or in a licensed rideshare that you get through the app and get at one of the designated areas, you don't really know who you're dealing with. It could be anybody. Maybe they're a suburban cab, maybe they're just some random Joe Schmo that's never been vetted by anybody. They can charge you really excessive fees than what the city of Chicago would allow. And we've had a couple instances, complaints where people's luggage was, I say quote unquote, taken hostage. And so what happened in those scenarios was that the driver took the passenger to an ATM, said to take out this amount of money, that the ride was going to cost this amount. And if they didn't do it, then they would make them get out of the vehicle and just take their luggage. So make sure, so the best way to protect against that is to use the taxi stands at O'Hare and Midway. Ignore anyone trying to solicit you at the airports. And we do have investigators that are at the airports. They impound the vehicles, they cite the drivers, but as an individual, you should know, just ignore them. Flag down a airport staff if you want, but don't accept their ride. And then know that any rideshare driver, so TNP, Uber, Lyft, they have to pick up from their designated areas, O'Hare and Midway, so they should not be approaching you unsolicited either. All right, the next one that we'll talk about are mail and parcel deliveries. These are when someone purporting to be FedEx, USPS, UPS claim that you missed a delivery. They'll send a text message or send an email asking you to go to some random link to either provide information or to pay for delivery. Sometimes they'll say that there wasn't enough postage entered and you have to pay a nominal amount to be able to get some package. And so we have a picture of what that could look like. And some ways to protect yourself from falling victim to this mail or parcel delivery would be, don't click on any email attachments or don't download email attachments if you don't know where it's coming from. Check the sender, check to make sure that the domain matches. So we'll go through some where the domain doesn't match and we'll take a look at what that looks like. But if someone's purporting to be USPS and they're emailing from anything other than USPS.gov, it's a red flag, it's a scam, shouldn't reply. And then if you are, take a moment before clicking something and providing information and ask yourself whether you mailed something to someone or if you're expecting a delivery from someone. And then the other thing is that FedEx, UPS, and USPS all require you to opt in to text messages. So if you don't remember providing your contact information to one of these companies, that is another big red flag. Here is an email example of the mail and parcel scam. And so I've highlighted in red kind of what these red flags are, and things that can alert you to the fact that they are a scam. So right at the top, we see important, check your package details. We've talked a little bit about how scammers really prey on people who just don't have a lot of time to make a decision. And they present these exciting offers asking you to act fast. And so asking you to check your package details is kind of the first way that they put you on alert, make you want to like avoid your own instincts and just hurry, hurry, hurry to get this done. The second thing we see is that this email is coming from supporting us at us-trackingsupport.com as opposed to USPS. It's claiming to be from the United States Postal Service, but that domain us-trackingsupport.com doesn't match the United States Postal Service emails that they use. The next two that you see for dear customer and the comma, this next one, the blah, blah, blah will be sent back, comma. These kinds of typos and misspellings are another red flag. We see them commonly in emails from scammers that things just look a little bit off. The next thing that you'll see is this check this now. You can, if you hover over a box that takes you to another link, you can see where it is going to direct you to. And I would always recommend before you actually click a link to see where it's going to go. And again, if it's not going to USPS.gov or some affiliated website with USPS, that it's going to be a big red flag. It'll take you to some unknown site and again, either ask you for personal information or to ask you to pay some amount of money. And then at the bottom, there's kind of a red line through it. Sorry, the formatting got a little messed up. But what it says is, please note that if a redelivery is not scheduled within 48 hours, you can't submit a redelivery request again, and handling fees will not be refunded. Again, this is a way to get you to act quickly, make you think that you need to act right this moment so that your guard is down, and you're not thinking through what it's actually asking you to do. Some tips for online marketplaces. So this is like your Facebook marketplace or your Craigslist. These can have wildly varying rules on the kinds of protection that they provide. Some marketplaces solely connect buyers and sellers. Some like eBay or use PayPal may have more protections, but you want to just take a look at the policies for each of these that you are considering buying or selling on, and see if they can help receive a refund or what their policies are in the event that there's a dispute between a buyer and a seller. Inspect photos carefully, do your own quality control, make sure you know exactly what you're getting into, and look at the buyer, the seller, see if they have reviews or if they've done this before that can help build trust or let you know if they are brand new to this and possibly creating a bunch of different accounts. So look into that and know the shipping fees and return policies that they have. If you're selling an item on one of these marketplaces, I would say to be aware of responses that you get really quickly. There are bots that scammers can use to look for new postings so that they can immediately reply, because if they can be one of the first responses, people are typically pretty eager to offload whatever they're trying to sell, and they can be taken advantage of. So some of the kind of red flags that we'll see if it's a scammer that's contacting you as a buyer when you are selling something, they may ask to try to use Zelle to send somebody else. They may offer to pay more than what you're asking for if you'll either mail it or use a courier. These are all red flags. I would say meet up at a public location, demand cash in person, and don't transact if they are wanting to kind of bend these rules. All right, another kind of digital scam that we see involve banking scams. Scammers can spoof telephone numbers. So that means that a scammer can make it look like they are texting from your bank's customer service number and make it appear that your bank is contacting you. So the most common ways that we see this would be either an email or a fraud alert text message. And so you'll see that on the right-hand side. Did you attempt to Zelle this amount? And you say yes or no. And in this case, the person replied no, and it indicates, okay, your card's restricted, a phone call has been generated. So now you're expecting your bank to call you. You pick up the phone and they may ask you again for personal information, your card number. They may ask you to verify your PIN. And again, it's a way to collect that information from you. A way that you can protect yourself against this would always be to hang up the phone and call the number on the back of your own credit card. Don't call whatever number that they called from. Call the number that's on the back of your card and see if there's something going on, or use whatever contact information is on their website. Then another thing that we see is fraudulent order confirmations. Again, this is a similar way to the USPS and the banking ones, where they send an email asking you to track your package, and then to provide information or money to get that out of you. So again, the red flags are highlighted in red where it says help. This is purporting to be an Amazon shipping notification, but it comes from help@markertrails.com. That's not from Amazon. So your first red flag. The next one would be the approximate arrival is December 19, 18, just wonky looking dates. It should be your second red flag. And then the last red flag, when you highlight over that track your package link, you can see that it goes to mrcosmetic.com/whatever. And so you see that it's not anything affiliated with Amazon. Lord knows what they're going to ask for when you get to that website, but it's not going to be good. So that's what that can look like. And again, I'm not picking on any of these companies that I featured here. It's just some of the common ones that we see. But any of these, anyone can be a victim. They can pretend to come from any store, any agency. So be on the lookout. And then I did want to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence and crypto scams. And I want to be very upfront that this is an area, the city doesn't have ordinances that directly protect against it. We have a general consumer fraud ordinance, but no specific regulations related to AI and cryptocurrency. And part of the reason is because in order for the city of Chicago to act, we have to have jurisdiction and authority. And it can be really difficult to track down where these crypto scams are originating from. And so if it's not within the city of Chicago, then we don't have authority or jurisdiction. But AI and crypto is kind of the forefront of scammer technology. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about it. So generative AI is kind of where the buzz is at. And generative AI is when you use artificial intelligence to create new content. And that can come in the form of audio, images, text, and videos. They can create like a voice recording. If they have a recording of someone's voice, they can use that recording to create a script for that voice to say whatever they want. They can create entire new images, just made up people. And it can be used to create someone that the general public would think looks trustworthy, sounds trustworthy, and they can run whatever script that they want. And so it's easy to see how this can be abused by scammers. So the first one would be that they can mimic your voice or your appearance to your friends or family. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about kind of like the mom or grandma, I'm in jail scheme. You need to come here and pay to bail whoever out. That's, kind of as old as the hills. But now someone can mimic your voice to call your friends and family and say that you need money to get out of, whatever crazy situation they say that you're in. And so it can appear just very real. And then the next one would be to create images and videos of people that don't exist to appear more trustworthy. The FTC had an article recently about how there was this hoax crypto investment platform, and they created this YouTube video with a purported CEO to tout the company and to lure investors in, but it wasn't the actual CEO of the company in the video. It was this AI generated avatar. And there was no person behind it. It wasn't a real person. It was just a completely AI generated image and video made to lure people in, to look trustworthy so that people would give their money to this platform. So outsmarting the scam in terms of cryptocurrency would be to always be cautious of people promoting investments on social media. There are, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of fake platforms that claim to trade crypto, but they don't actually trade anything. It's just 100% scams, and they'll take your money. The other one that we see on social media a lot is things that are just basically pyramid schemes, where they ask you to recruit other investors, and no one ever earns what they're told they're going to earn with that. And so just be aware anytime someone is asking you to recruit someone else, it's probably going to be a pyramid scheme. Again, another hallmark of any scam in kind of any realm is a promise of high returns with little risk. If things are too good to be true, if it sounds too good to be true, then it probably is. And then lastly, if you do invest in crypto and things just start seeming really fishy, and you ask your contact or whoever to withdraw your money, and they say, okay, fine, we'll give you your money back, but you need to pay taxes to us, or you need to pay another $1,000 for this reason or whatever. Don't do it. They're just trying to get as much as they can out of you. So if you do happen to fall for one of those scams, you have a couple resources that you can turn to. The first would be to file a complaint with Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. So you can do that by calling 311, going to the website, or using the app. If it was outside the city of Chicago, then you can file a complaint with the Illinois Attorney General. And if it was a text, phone, or web-based scams, you should file with the FTC. And then, as always, consulting with an attorney is a good way to protect yourself in the event that BACP can't handle a complaint or isn't able to seek restitution. I included just a really quick, and I'm just going to kind of breeze through these, but this is the complaint process. If you go to the 311 website, here's how you submit a consumer fraud complaint that'll be heard by me and my department. Would be to create service request. When you click that, this is what comes up. You'll click the service request again. Once you click that, you'll see the consumer and employee protection. So you'll click on that one. Subcategories, go to consumers. And then consumer fraud complaint, you'll create your request and it'll ask you about the details of your complaint, when, how much you paid, how you paid. And so that's how you submit your complaint. After you fall victim to a complaint, it could potentially get worse. And here's how. So people that fall for scams are often targeted by subsequent scammers. It's more likely, if you fall for an IRS scam, and that scammer has your contact information, maybe you block them, but they can sell your phone number to someone who may try to target you for a crypto scam. And so you should always be on the lookout for that. I would say don't answer any unsolicited text messages or phone calls. If you don't know who's calling you, just let it go to voicemail and see what they have to say, which sounds kind of cold, but I think it's part of the reality of the world that we live in these days, because when you pick up your phone and it's a scammer, then they know that they've got live bait on the other end of the line. And that's useful information for them. So next, there are risk recovery scammers. So you may be contacted by someone claiming to be from a recovery company offering to help you get your money back from whatever scammer. Don't ever pay a company or anyone to help you recoup money that you lost to a scam. It is also a scam. You will continue to lose more money. If you paid a scammer by card, wire transfer, money transfer app, try your luck and see if you can contact the company, tell them fraud's involved and ask them to reverse the payment. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but we would recommend that you at least try. And then if you gave out personal information like your social security number, you can go to identitytheft.gov to create a recovery plan and make sure that you change passwords. So these are the takeaways to remember from this webinar: to pay by credit card, review your card and bank statements frequently for unauthorized charges, use cash only for transactions between you and another person, ignore unsolicited calls, texts, and emails, don't fall for offers that are too good to be true, don't send money to get money, and don't pay people in gift cards, and be aware of high pressure tactics that ask you to act really quickly. So that is the end of my webinar, and I will open it up for questions and answers. Okay, I see in the Q&A box that someone has filed complaints against a company. I'd welcome you to call 311, filing a complaint with FTC or IC3, which I think is the FBI's website. I would encourage, that doesn't automatically create a complaint with the city of Chicago, so I'd certainly invite you to file a complaint with 311. So let me go through the chat box here. And I have a question about IRS. Yes, the IRS scam is a really common one. I've also gotten a call claiming to be from the IRS. I don't have a slide about that. However, what we typically see is either like a call coming from the IRS saying that you owe money, that you're going to be taken off to jail. The IRS has a direct telephone number. We can look that number up, call them directly, and they're always going to have letters in writing. So notifying you of if you have like a payment that's owed. So definitely contact the IRS directly if you get some weird contact from them, especially if it's through the phone. Always reach out to them directly to verify that that whatever mail or call that you got actually came from them. Filing a complaint through BBB helps. Yeah, we work with the Better Business Bureau as well. Our department is part of a work group that gets together with other local branches of federal agencies. So BACP is in contact with the FTC and the Better Business Bureau, and FBI, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And we get together quarterly to talk about the most common scams that we see. And so some of the content that we've discussed here is things that other people, other agencies are seeing more in kind of their realm, especially the AI, cryptocurrency areas, because BACP doesn't have direct authority over that. But it's such a huge new thing in this world of consumer fraud. So I did want to talk about it a little bit, but I would certainly encourage people to use those resources as well, that's provided by FTC, Better Business Bureau, and those agencies. And I think I'm caught up with chat. I don't believe that I see other questions. So I'd like to thank everyone for their time. I really appreciate you coming out, and I hope you learned something today.
Thank you, Marianne, for today's presentation. Again, if you are a part of the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program, your account will automatically reflect your attendance for today. To learn more about our upcoming webinars, please visit chicago.gov/BACP webinars. Thanks again to Marianne and everyone. Continue to have a great day.